another Lunch and Learn session. This is part of a series of webinars that's hosted by a variety of presenters on a variety of topics until the end of this year. Now, today we will be focusing on the Maree Career Matrix, and both myself and Hanli will be presenting and keeping you busy for the next hour. We hope that you enjoy. And on this note, I'm going to hand over to Hanli, who will do the formal introduction.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today you will be introduced then to one of our locally developed South African questionnaires, namely the Maree Career Matrix, in short referred to as the MCM. We have the great privilege to introduce the MCM, an instrument developed by Professor Kobus Maree, who is regarded as a career expert and who is also internationally well known for his work and contributions in the field of career counseling. The MCM is a psychometric instrument registered at the HPCSA and also available from the JVR Africa Group. The discussion today then will focus on the MCM and also on its application in the broader context of career counseling. We hope to provide you with information and learnings that you can take away and use in your own practice during your career exploration processes with your clients. We also welcome Eloise Beekers, who will be assisting us with a webinar console. Any questions that you may have during the webinar or afterwards can be directed to the following email address: info@jvrafrica.co.za, and Jani and I will try and answer the questions that you may have. Okay. With this slide, the second slide, we would like to provide you with a structure and rhythm of how we will be guiding the discussion. Inevitably, when we talk about an instrument such as the Maree Career Matrix, we need to discuss it within the broader context of career counseling where the instrument will be applied. For a moment, we will look at the world of work and how tremendously it has changed over the past few years due to the rapid advancement in technology. We will also look at the current employment context within South Africa, where most of us as career counselors can add value and contribute to the wider society. So following on this point, we will introduce the MCM, a little bit about how it is administered, scored, and interpreted. And then the last point of the discussion will involve 2 case studies to illustrate the practical use and application of the MCM. This invaluable information is shared especially when you are unfamiliar with the instrument and also a little bit unfamiliar with the use of the instrument in a practical context. So if you have any questions in this regard, then you are more than welcome to contact us so that we can assist you with the use and utilization of the MCM. At the end of the session, we will quickly summarize important points and wrap up the webinar. When we move on to the next slide, then we will see how the world of work has changed. For this presentation, in our discussion, we will focus specifically on the global changes in the workplace that communication and information technology, the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution, has brought about during the last decade and even in the not too long ago 4 to 5 years. Dramatic changes in the way we work and also how we envision our future work environment to be sets the standard and guidelines in how we need to prepare and respond to stay relevant and to ensure sustainability for our own and the future workforce. So when we look back historically, at the economic situation, most work environments we found were rather predictable, where workers felt a little bit more secure, stable, and sure about their future. It was also expected that a person would start at a specific company, work there, and gradually move up the organizational ladder, sometimes becoming an expert in a specific knowledge area, and then eventually retire with a pension fund that provided financially well into their old age. But when we look at the present context, um, the notion of climbing up the ladder and seniority in the workplace is rapidly disappearing. So lifelong employment or regular promotion is not a guarantee anymore. Modern companies tend to specify the specific skills and capabilities that they are looking for rather than advertising specific jobs. So the notion of de-jobbing. This takes place against the backdrop of a continuous changing dynamic and flexible economic situation where fewer and fewer guarantees are provided to employees. It is predicted that the new world of work is and will be characterized by more short-term contracts or agreements negotiated around specific projects. People will be more self-employed, and people will change and modify their careers more around their own specific needs and will be less willing to sacrifice some of their personal time in uh, the interest of their own careers, and also about the requirements set by organizations. So within this context, then you will find that job security is not just about finding employment within an organization, but it's about employability. So how would the workers then ensure that they sustain their own employment history? So we will find that workers specifically will have to learn new skills, and they will have to make themselves more employable for the new world of work. So you will see that careers will increasingly not be seen as a chosen career, but also be constructed through a series of decision making that a person will do, and they will work right throughout life, and they will be managing their own career rather than having an organization or the work environment that would set the trend and provide the specific requirements for a person to do their specific job in the future. So having knowledge about how the world of work has changed and will be changing in the future, and keeping that in the back of our minds, will also guide us and lead us in our approach and application in career counseling, and then also specifically in the use of career counseling tools such as the MCM. On the other hand, we live in and work in South Africa, so therefore we need to also consider the broader context in which we will be providing our services as career practitioners. When we look at the history of South Africa, we would see that the population composition and socioeconomic challenges in South Africa, we are faced with a certain reality that are the same, but also unique compared to other countries in the world. So currently, when we look at South Africa on a macro level, we will see that the official unemployment rate is about 25%. And this percentage increases to about 36% if we include the workers who have given up hope and who is not looking for jobs anymore. This means that 1 in every 4 active South Africans are jobless. Even more significant is the fact that about 3/4, about 76% of the unemployed, report that they have been unemployed for 1 year and longer. So a further interesting characteristic of South Africa's unemployment crisis is its concentration in the 15 to 34-year age cohort. This age cohort represent 68% of South Africa's unemployed. This is quite disconcerting when we think about the underutilized potential of this specific group of the population, who generally speaking, when we think about it, usually are young, enthusiastic, energetic, and physically healthy. They should already be an asset to the South African workforce, given that they should be at the beginning and some at the peak of their careers by now, especially in terms of being productive, active employees. Given the historical past then of South Africa, a large group of the population were denied access to certain resources and proper education, or received below standard schooling. These inequalities contributed to the current situation where there is an oversupply of our unskilled or low educated workers and a shortage of high-skilled workers. The gap between what the youth can offer and then what the world of work requires is becoming greater every year if South Africa cannot provide proper education opportunities for the youth to, in the end, secure more skilled jobs. According to the research done by Manpower Group in 2013, business leaders are taking steps to identify and grow their talent pool already to ensure access to the right skills that will help drive business results in the future. So given this scenario, career practitioners have a very important role to play in preparing and guiding individuals in choosing subjects and later careers that will provide the necessary skills to build the economy and the workforce of South Africa. Career counseling as a process is inevitably influenced by the wider global economic situation, but also by the smaller economy or context where career practitioners are fulfilling their function. So within South Africa as such, career practitioners should also strive to reach the parts of the population who are in need of career counseling and who don't always have the means to access these processes. So this is quite a challenge for many of our practitioners. Bearing all of this in mind, we are moving into the next slide where the Maree Career Matrix as a tool used in the process of career counseling will be discussed. When we look at the Maree Career Matrix then, we will see that it is a South African tool developed by Professor Kobus Maree, and the rationale for the development of the MCM was based on the belief that it will be better to construct an updated interest-related questionnaire. Another reason or motivation for the development of the MCM was to have a more locally South African-owned assessment. If we look back into the history, then we would see there wasn't a lot of instruments developed that we could say was specifically owned by South African developers or psychologists. As mentioned earlier, it is an interest questionnaire that is registered at the Health Professions Council of South Africa. And due to its registration, the MCM can only be accessed and utilized by registered professionals such as psychologists, psychometrists, and counselors. To make the information then available to non-registered persons such as your life orientation teachers or parents or even learners, the MCM information can be interpreted and integrated into a workbook with other relevant assessments or career-related information. The questionnaire can be administered to individuals 14 years and older, and the format is very simple and easy to understand. So the MCM is available both in an online and in a paper and pencil format. The online version can be accessed via the JVRO platform. Okay, then we move on to the next slide where we look at the purpose of the MCM. So the MCM is used to measure both career interests and self-estimates of confidence about aptitude to follow certain careers. When we stand still for a moment and look at interests, we find that research shows that interests are fairly stable, even at a young age. According to Hansen 2005 and Swanson 1999, interest is among the most stable psychological constructs to measure. So there we will also find that there's a general agreement among researchers that a person's interest stabilizes on somewhere between grade 11 and grade 12, so about at the age of 17 years. There's also sometimes an exception to the rule where we might find that some people's interest profiles might keep on stabilizing up to the age of 25. The acquisition of knowledge and job opportunities and other situational influences, etc., also continue to influence interest profiles throughout people's lifespans. For example, where a person may start and pursue an HR career, but later in life end up after a few years in industrial psychology. Several methods can be used to assess interest, such as observations, interviews, informal questionnaires, and then psychometric assessments such as the MCM. When we look at the MCM, the developer also used self-estimates of confidence about aptitude to follow certain careers, so to predict the choice and achievement in a field of study or career. So research also indicates that self-estimates of interest are good indicators of a person's readiness to make career choices. Self-perception about skills play an important role in career choices. And self-estimates of abilities impacts then also the degree of interest shown in careers, and especially the actual career that are chosen and engaged in. People's self-concept co-determines what careers they will be interested in. So you will notice that the MCM doesn't measure a specific competence, but more of a perceived estimate of whether a person believes they will be able to follow a certain career. In conclusion then, research studies indicate that it can be very helpful in making the right career decisions when career interests and self-estimates are assessed and charted within a specific questionnaire. When we move on to the next slide, then we can look at the application of the MCM. We will find that the MCM is useful in a variety of settings and can be used in all the different stages of a person's career lifespan. It can be used right at the beginning, where a person starts exploring the different subjects that they would like to choose at the end of grade 9, right up to where a person is nearing the end of their career life at retirement. Nowadays, we find that many people move into so-called retirement, but they still feel that they can add value to society. They might leave their formal official career to follow another path they feel they never had time for. So many older people are also still in good health when they retire, and they feel now they have time to follow a hobby as a career where financial constraints may not be an issue anymore. So you will find that the MCM as a tool is helpful in all the different stages where you might find as a career counselor that a client might approach you and ask for a career counseling process. So even when you have your grade 11s and 12s that's leaving school, or even graduates, or maybe even in a mid-career situation where someone is really trying to move from in a specific direction, then you will find that the MCM will be quite a helpful tool to use in your career exploration processes. The next slide that I am looking at and going to discuss is just the theoretical framework of the MCM. When we look at the theoretical and the conceptual framework of the MCM, then we find that there are three theories that underpins the MCM's structure, and we notice that it still builds on the Holland's interest theory, with links then to the trait and factor theory, where the theory implies that personality types matches the work environment. So this theory holds that a specific type of personality would be attracted to certain work environments that complement the specific characteristics of the person. The self-development, self-concept or developmental theory deals with career development following different stages throughout the lifespan. It is a continuous process and follows different phases as a person moves along through life. The social cognitive learning theory, the third one, deals with career decision making, where different factors can play a role in deciding to choose a career, such as genetic factors, environmental conditions, learning experiences, etc. It also includes people's self-beliefs about their capacity to control events that affect and shape their lives. So this determines then how they would choose a career and whether they believe there are restrictions on their choice of careers. So social learning here plays an important role. We will find that with the MCM, usually with a lot of questionnaires, we find that there are only one theory that underpins the model of the questionnaire. But if we look at career counseling in the broader context, then we will see that not only one theory, especially in the changing world of work, can really explain what way and what method of career counseling would be helpful. Previously, when you look at Holland's occupational theory, and if you look at the trait and factor theory, it can in part explain how a specific career counseling process would work. But then still there are other theories like the self concept or development theory that we can follow, where you look at the different career stages that a person would move through their whole lifespan. But then there are also the other factors of the social cognitive learning theory that can also play a role in how a person would make a specific career decision. So this is how the theoretical framework then of the MCM underpins then where the development of the MCM then started. When we just quickly in the next slide look at the psychometric properties of the MCM, we will see again that it's constructed and developed in South Africa. And for the purpose of this session, we are not going to spend too much time on the psychometric properties of the MCM, but it's worth mentioning. We refer you also to the MCM technical manual, where considerations regarding the construction of the instrument, the different research phases, the research design, and the psychometric properties are discussed in more detail. So like mentioned before, it was developed by Professor J.D. Maree locally. The norm sample for the standardization sample were pupils from urban as well as rural schools. So the initial sample was about 1,106 learners that participated and completed the MCM. Both validity and reliability studies were done, and the detail of all those studies are in the technical manual if you would like to refer back to it. We've worked mostly with the raw scores on the MCM, but it can be converted into Stein scores, specifically where you would like to use the scores and you are integrating the information of the MCM with other assessments that might also be on a Stein score, and how the conversion is supposed to happen. You will find that that is demonstrated in detail in the manual if preferred. So they specifically use Stein scores as norm points because they are commonly used in the interpretation of psychological tests and are also easy to interpret. Okay. When we move on to the next slide, then we will just quickly look at the administration of the MCM. So when the MCM can be administered in a group with either pen and paper copy or electronically. Administration time takes about 25 to 30 minutes, and it looks at the individual's attraction to 19 job categories by asking them to rate their interest and confidence level in 152 different occupations. Test takers need to assess their interest on a 3-point Likert scale, and then afterwards on also a 3-point Likert scale in terms of how confident they believe they would specifically then follow a certain career. So a test taker or a learner or any candidate that's completing the MCM can get a minimum score of 0 or either a maximum score of 16 if a person has chosen 2 as the highest number for a specific category. I'm not going to go into much detail with the administration of the MCM because we would like to focus a little bit more on how the MCM is interpreted. When we go on to the next slide, then you will see there are 19 different career categories that I've listed in the slide. And you will also notice that with the different career categories and the different occupations, Professor Kobus Maree specifically did a lot of research and looked at the different types of occupations that are available. And with the changing world of the world, he was also looking at what other occupations have already evolved and what new ones are available that the current learners can also have a look at and decide whether they would pursue such a career. And there I can mention just the entrepreneurship category and running and maintaining a personal business. That would be quite a different type of career category than what we would have had a few years back. So the Professor Kobus decided upon through a lot of research and after consultation with different international career experts on the 152 occupations and then also the 19 categories of the Maree Career Matrix. You will see there of specifically the current career categories that we would find also in other questionnaires like practical or technical or even the office-based activities and the information and communication technology career category. And we might find that these categories will still be there, but as we move along and as technology is influencing us, we might find that some of these career categories will start disappearing, and we might find we will be have to add some other career categories and occupations as those type of occupations evolve and are shaped by the advances in technology. When we move on to the next slide, I would just like to stand still a little bit and look at the scoring. You will find when you look at the MCM, the test items is on one large A3 page folded in 2. So your hard copy that you are looking at in this slide is divided into 8 large sections, with 152 occupations divided into these sections. It is quite colorful to keep the child's attention, but also to make the scoring for the practitioner a bit more easier. In large groups or in career workshops, the test takers can be shown how to score their responses even. So you may find that when you do career counseling in a large group and you find that you are going to do a workshop immediately afterwards, the scoring is so simple that you can even ask the learners to help with the scoring. And this you will find the children usually enjoy, and they are eager to participate. With the hand scoring, you will find that it's basically counting all the different rows with the same colors across for interest and self-confidence scores separate, and then plotting the scores on a grid at the back of the A3 page. The other more convenient option would be to administer the MCM online and then generate an individual report. When also working with large groups on the online platform, You can even tick the automatically generate report button, and then the report is immediately sent to your confidential email address after the test taker has indicated that they have completed the assessment. So you will notice that with the MCM, the scoring is quite easy, and there is no difficult calculations that you have to do to eventually get to the score of a person's score on a specific career category. When we look then at the next slide, then we will see the matrix, and that is where the name of the Maree Career Matrix come from. And both this matrix you will find in the hand scoring and also in the online version. So when the software report is printed, you will see the matrix also as shown on the slide. You will find that the matrix is divided into 4 different quadrants. So the top right corner is the first quadrant, and that would be where you will find if a person score quite high on interest and in confidence, then you will probably find the score right in that quadrant, and that would be then the specific career category that you can further explore with a learner or the test taker. Then, if you look at the bottom right, then you will find the number 2 quadrant, where you will have a score that is high on interest, but then there's a little bit of a lower score on confidence. And that specific quadrant, when you interpret it, you will see that it means that this person is interested in a specific career category, but they don't believe that they have the ability or that they will have the ability to be successful in that career. That specific quadrant is then important, and in the interpretation you may find that the Maree Career Matrix, that the interest takes precedence above or over confidence. So here you will find that if a person scores high on interest, then at least there is a motivation to pursue that specific career. And you might find that the person should just look at the career and maybe just upskill themselves. And those would also then be a category where the person you can explore if you don't find any scores within the top quadrant. Then also on the Maree Career Matrix, you will also find the quadrant that's on the top left-hand corner, and that is your 3rd quadrant that you can look at if you don't find any scores maybe in quadrant number 1 or 2. And there you will find then it would be then a person with a high confidence. They believe they would be able to pursue that specific career, but then they are not really interested in. So those would be then specific categories that a person can choose. It's a skill that they believe they will have, but then there's not really an interest. So that would be then the case where you would have then that your interest is a little bit lower. And then you will also find that the 4th quadrant in the bottom left corner is quadrant number 4, and that is low confidence and low interest. So these ones would be then at the bottom of the pile. So a person would not necessarily spend a lot of time if a candidate has quite a spread in any of the other 3 quadrants in terms of their interest and confidence in career categories. But then when you look at the quadrant, you might also find that we have a tie-breaking rule. When you do the hand scoring, then you might find if a person falls right onto one of the lines, so right onto the border between 2 different quadrants, then if they have a score of, let's say, an 8 on interest, and maybe then a score of 6 on confidence, then you just deduct 1 point, and then the person might fall into the 4th quadrant. So it's very important to also, where there are cases where the scores are on the border of the quadrant, to just follow the tie-breaking rule when you do the hand scoring. But you will also find that within the online system with the software report, we have made provision for the specific tie-breaking rule. When you then look at the next slide, then you also find I haven't included in the specific presentation all the different or the complete sample report of the MCM, but we have looked at what specific pages in the Maree Career Matrix we use that are important, that we use in the interpretation. So we see and find any differences also in the interest and confidence scores. We will explore and find out why there is a discrepancy. If a person has a very high interest, for instance, if you look at the next slide in engineering and the built environment, let's say the score in terms of confidence doesn't feature under the top 4, then there would be a discrepancy, and it's important to explore why that is so. So this would also be especially important to look at when you are interpreting the MCM as an instrument. Then on the next slide, you will see that also, although we look at the broad career categories and you look at whether there are high scores on the interest and on the confidence, we also have a specific page in the sample report where if a person or a candidate has scored high on both interest and confidence, then that specific job would then be highlighted in the sample report. So then you might find that there is a list, not in any specific order. It just means that a person has scored both high, so the 2 on, for instance, or example, computer programmer, and then also a 2 on confidence. And that's why these type of jobs are then listed in the sample report. Okay. And then when we go on to the next page, then we will see, to illustrate the interpretation, I will hand over to Yanni to give a little bit more detail in terms of how you would do an actual case study and interpretation. It's very important also to look at how you are going to do the feedback and against which background are you interpreting your MCM results. But just a point that I would like to mention is also to specifically mention that when you do use the MCM, don't use it in isolation. Always use it in combination with other assessment instruments, so that you have enough information and enough resources where you can verify some of your hypothesis when you look at the scores that you may find on just specifically the MCM. Yanni, I would like to then hand over to you for the case studies, if you are okay with.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Thank you, Hanli, for the nice background theory. Now we are all hopefully confident in the development of the tool and the necessity of the tool. I am, however, going to take you through the application now. now we've seen a massive increase, both nationally and internationally, with regards to interest around career counselling. Now, looking at the statistics that Hanli just showed us, it is a critical aspect in South Africa, but also in the rest of the world. Now, often we get clients phoning in asking us what they need to use when they want to run a specific career process. Now, we all know it depends very much on that specific client's context. It depends on whether they are going to see a group of students or individual, or the students on individual, whether they have capacity and resources as to other registered individuals, or are they going to use the school system and the teachers to help with possible feedback, facilitation, etc. It depends on their budget. It depends on the battery of assessments that they're going to be using. They cannot get let's say, for example, a grade 9 student going through a subject choice process, sitting down for 4 hours completing assessments. It just doesn't make sense. They also need to think of timing, as I say, but logistics. Often, even though the electronic, we're going more and more, electronic and online, you do need to really think through what the school, for example's capacity is as to computers available to students for them to complete these assessments on electronics or computers. We recently had a client who had a large amount of students that they needed to assess, did all the planning to the nth degree, had planned to do everything electronically, and had iPads for all the kids, or tablets for all the kids, so that they can complete it electronically. And they had trouble with their Wi-Fi connection, with the internet connection. Luckily, they had a plan B and they had hard copies available, but it's things like that that one needs to think about when deciding on the assessment battery. Now, I'm going to take you through 2 case studies where we chose to use the MCM within the processes that we followed. The one is an individual case, and the other one is a group assessment case. Now, this specific webinar focuses on youth development, and that is also why both the case studies we're going through is focused on youth, but you can use the MCM for an older population as well. It really, again, depends on the context and the client's need. Now, in saying that, Hannah, would you switch to the next slide, please? The first individual case study that I'm going to be discussed was actually an assessment that was done recently. It's about a month or 2 ago. It was for a private school, and they actually asked us to come in to do a group administration process. Prior to the process, mom contacted us saying that they will be immigrating, and that but she really wants her child to go through this process, and whether we could actually take it on her child on an individual basis, which we then did. Now, with regards to immigration, even though this was a subject choice intervention, they focused on they immigrated to the States, and the subjects weren't really known to them as to what the school has to offer, where they're going to, etc. But they really wanted to go through the process because they wanted to understand where the interests are, understand the child better, understand what their confidence are, etc., in order to be able to make informed decisions when they then get there and understand the school structure in which they will be included in the States when they arrive there. So he did exactly the same battery of assessments that we did with the rest of the school or the rest of the grade going through the subject choice intervention. We just gave him individual feedback on his assessments and results. Now, the battery that we used consisted of a biographical questionnaire, which we always include, a Raven's progressive matrices, which measured reasoning, logical reasoning. We also included the study orientation towards mathematics questionnaire. That specific assessment we typically include when we deal with subject choice, because it really gives you a good strategy around maths, around how you can approach maths in the grades to come in order for you to better your chances to perform in that specific subject. The Maree Career Matrix were included as an interest questionnaire. We also looked at the Murphy-Mice-Guide type indicator for children, which is the youth version of the MBTI. So it's personality type that we looked at, and we always incorporate academic results. Now, even though that looks and sounds like a mouthful, luckily we did administration on the biographical and the Ravens, which is both paper and pencil, on the one day, and we followed with the study orientation towards maths, Maree Career Matrix, and the Murphy-Mice Guide the following day, which didn't result in the students sitting more than an hour and a half per session to complete these assessments. In total, 3 hours administration time. Now, before we look at the MCM results specifically, I just want to give you a little bit of context as to what were the findings and the results of some of the other assessments in order to triangulate. Now, from the biographical questionnaire, we ask a few questions, and specifically to get qualitative information to understand the person's context. Now, within that questionnaire, we ask about health, and we ask about interests, and we ask about hobbies, and various other things. What we got there was that both his parents, let's talk about John, both John's parents were in the IT industry and really high up, very successful in the IT industry as well. What we also got out of the biographical questionnaire was that his favorite subjects were science, IT, and maths. And all his reasoning behind choosing those subjects as his favorites were around problem solving, thinking about things critically, enjoying a challenge, and really liking and doing well in those subjects. His worst subjects, just for a side note, were Afrikaans, business studies, and life orientation. And the main reason behind those were that it just didn't seem to be a challenge for him, didn't find it interesting at all, and saw that as his worst. He did, however, we did, however, also ask him things around careers and books that he reads, etc. And careers that he's ever been interested in. He wrote a writer, a scientist, in all its forms. So when he said scientist, he said in brackets, in all its forms. He also mentioned guitarist, detective, a mathematician, and a president, but in brackets again, but not a politician. So you can get a feel for, what type of kid this is. Somebody that's got quite a variety of interests, thinking of a writer, a guitarist, a detective, and a little bit of sense of humor around, being the president, and confidence in that as well, but definitely not a politician. So, giving us a feel for the individual in itself. Academic results, I'm just jumping quickly. Enormously gifted kid. He had a grade average in his first term academic results of 94% in this private school, meaning that this is really a gifted, and that also gives you an indication of what he scored on the Ravens progressive matrices, which was a percentile above the 95 percentile range. So again, this is a very gifted child, somebody that can really pursue anything they put their mind to. These cases, however, are sometimes a little bit more challenging because they are so gifted and because there are nothing else keeping them from pursuing any type of career or dream. It sometimes opens up the world so broadly that it's difficult for them to get to a stream or a line of thinking. So it might be so diverse and so broad and struggles with closing it a little bit and focusing a little bit more. Now, the study orientation towards maths, again, that information is normally just used for strategy purposes as to how one can improve maths. And then for those of you who understand type and understand or knows the MBTI for that matter, he came out to be an ISTJ. So the person that is very much focused on detail, critical thinking, an organized thinker, somebody that likes to solve problems, investigate, getting to the truth of something, very in line with that. I always think about it, a detective type of approach, as he mentioned in his biographical as well. Now, Hannah, if you can move to the next slide, please. I'm going to look and zoom into what the MCM gave us in this process. Now, this is now, we used, they completed all electronically, so we generated the electronic report for all the students, and this is specific, one of the pages, there's 17 pages in this report, a very thorough report, but this is just a summary page capturing the 19 categories. Now, where the bar charts are more colorful, where there's more blocks shown, where you can see the little worm more clearer, and that is where there's a bigger difference between interest and confidence. Where there's less of a color within the line, it shows you that the interest and the confidence are much closer to one another. Now, by looking at where the interest and the confidence are closer to one another, but also not non-existent, meaning on a 0, 1, or 2, one could slightly pick up on his musical interest, even though it is not on the higher end of the chart. There was definitely something there saying that, you know what, I enjoy in my free time playing a little bit guitar. And when we gave him feedback, we explored this with him as well, saying that yes, music is something that he loves, but not necessarily from a career perspective. Then moving on, you could see that the pink little lines are where word artistry came out. Now, again, we saw in his biographical, he refers to, you know, dream careers that he had when he was younger, showing up as a writer, which was also something interesting and worth exploring more with the client, which I'm going to tell you a little bit about in a second. Then you can immediately, if I jump to your information communication technology is one of your highest, one of the three highest areas that came out. And you can also see interest and confidence close to one another. Now, immediately you can think of, yes, his mom, his dad is in this industry, and you can imagine that he has a lot of knowledge about this industry. Then jumping to his absolute highest would be research. And you can see both interest and confidence being very high in this category. And then lastly is your engineering and built environment being slightly less interest, however, confidence in his ability in being able to pursue it. Now I'm going to tie all of this information together on the next slide, please, Hannah. Now, again, as all of you know, doing career processes and career counseling, the idea is not to tell a client what it is that they need to pursue, but rather to listen as to how they believe all of this information ties together. Now, when I asked him about information and communication technology and showed him his results around being high in IT, it's very important, especially with youth today, to determine whether it is just an interest of theirs, meaning that they enjoy computer games and they do coding in private schools and they do robotics and IT related tasks, and whether it's just more from a hobby perspective or a necessity perspective, meaning that all careers requires some sort of technology knowledge and interest, or whether they would really want to pursue that as an official formal career. Now, I explored that with him, talking about it, and he very quickly and confidently came to the point as to he grew up with it in his house, his parents pursue it, He's very good at it. He's very good at programming and coding and what else. But he doesn't believe his passion lies there. He doesn't believe that his career needs to be built on IT. Further, we started exploring the research and the word artistry together with engineering and built environment, looking at his biographical information questionnaire, his academic results as well, and also then his personality results. And he started to make the links around research would be his absolute ideal position to be in. He explained to me that at this stage, if he could really move into a science role, into a science industry where he can find things out, explore things, not necessarily social sciences and not even necessarily your medical sciences, but rather your applied sciences, rather there where it's to do with your physical sciences, your engineering sciences, where he can find new things out, where he can actually research things, and where he can critically look at the world and how it is functioning now and how he can improve on that. Where the penny really dropped and where the light bulb really came in is when I asked him about word artistry and why it showed up as high as it did. And he explained and spoke about books that he wrote when he was really young and how much he enjoys reading. And when he started thinking about the combination, when we started looking at these combinations and he started thinking about being able to publish his work, being able to write journal articles around possible research findings, being able to find new things out and write about it. That was as if this child's whole face lit up. Now, in the engineering and the built environment is very much where he would want his research to focus on. Now, for a grade 9 kid, this is a very specific dream. And this is not often that kids actually at this age come to such a clarity in view as to this is what they want to be and this is how they see it play out. And chances are it's going to still change often throughout his life. However, with his personality style being an ISTJ and with his absolutely high intellect and the unknown that they are going into as to immigrating, going to the US, etc., it really helped him actually being able to hold on to this more crystallized career dream of his. The answers weren't exactly there, the subjects weren't exactly chosen, but the combination of research, applied sciences, and word artistry, being able to write about it, was for him something that really made sense. Now, Anna, if you can go to the next slide, please. Hannah explained this thoroughly, and I'm not going to go into much detail, but this quadrant and this matrix, again, just shows you graphically what the previous slides showed with regards to their interest and confidence scores. So it's just a different way of showing exactly the same information. Sometimes clients prefer working off the first diagram, and other times it makes more sense for them to work off this diagram. You can go on to the next slide. Again, what is very important when interpreting the MCM results is to look at these specific careers. Now, for a younger age group, I would typically not want an individual to zoom on into one specific job title. The decision to make now in life when you're 15 years old as to what it is that you want to become it's unrealistic. It won't make sense, especially with the world of work changing so often. So the idea is more to focus on categories. However, what is valuable with this list is that sometimes a title pops up which didn't pop up in your broader categories, as because these job titles across all categories where you scored the job spec both a 2 on interest and a 2 on confidence. So worth area to investigate with the clients as well. I'm very cognizant of our time, so I'm not going to go into much detail because this just confirms the comfort that the student then actually got with John got with combination of word artistry, using computers, and IT will always be a part of his life. However, being more in a research, innovation, finding stuff out, what is new, was definitely more of a focus for him. And then you can move on to the next. Please, Anna. Just to tie up the individual case. So I want you to see that we used the various sources of information, both qualitative and quantitative. We used the MCM in combination. However, it gave a lot of insight and a lot of value as to what the possible future for the student could look like, could be, and it just directs them into a certain stream. It shouldn't make a decision for them, and you should not give them the decision. It works when you actually ask them how they see, why they see the results they see, why would word artistry fall into together with engineering and the built environment, and how they see research tying up to that. Just a nice example, I believe. Now, quickly, just to look at a group case study. This was a school in the Free State. You can see that we had about 141, I think, students in total, with lots of girls and 58 boys. Most of them Afrikaans speaking. This was a group of grade 10 students. They already chose these subjects. And what was interesting here is that the school had some complaints about them. They weren't seen as a very strong grade, and they had a lot of their grade pupils coming after they've now made the decision as to subjects in grade 9 already, implementing that in grade 10. Throughout the grade 10 year, they had a lot of students coming saying, I want to change subjects, I'm not happy with what I chose, etc. So the idea was the school really wanted to understand this grade. They wanted us to come in and assist a little bit in providing them with information about themselves, but also then around subject choices and how that would fit with personality, etc. What we did with the school was we did some narrative exercises specifically. We did a biographical as well. We looked at their academic results. We again looked at the Ravens. We used the Maree Career Matrix, and we also looked at the MMTIC, again, personality. Now, Hannah, if you can move to the next slide, please. Now, what was interesting, I'm going to look at all the findings in a second, but what was really interesting in this group is that they, on their biographical information forms, they had about, within the whole group, a range of 10 occupations that they want to pursue or that they've ever been interested in. Now, that is a very small sample of occupations. Now, this school being in the Free State, you could immediately get a feel for their knowledge about the world of work, the knowledge about what is out there and what careers there are to pursue was really very limited. Now, if you looked at the group result, most of the highest career categories on the MCM came out to be K, B, and M: entrepreneurship, a practical creative consumer studies, and then sport were the 3 highest interest and confidence scales. And even though it was the highest, it was still on a very low, it was still in the low category, or in the low matrix, which was interesting in itself. Now, a side note, you always interpret the highest, doesn't matter in which category it is. It can be that it is in the bottom of the pile category, which is in category 4. You still do the interpretation for the child. Doesn't mean that they're not interested in anything. It just shows you that there's definitely some exploration that still needs to happen, some knowledge that still needs to be gained, some lack of self-insight, but also a lack of insight about the world of work. So it gives you an indication in that regard. If you move to the next slide for me, Hannah. Just again depicting the practical creative consumer sciences and also entrepreneurship and the sport that came out to be the highest categories. Now, again, I'm concerned about our time, so I'm going to move to the next one, Hannah, please. Now, a summary of this process. I'm going to incorporate the summary of all the assessments together. So, first of all, through the facilitation of the feedback, through interaction with the kids, through the biographical information form, it was absolutely clear that there were not enough exposure to the world of work. It was then decided by the school to incorporate open days, to incorporate work days, shadowing within their life orientation subject. So work shadowing, being able to be exposed to more occupations and careers, having universities come visit the school. But not only was it a plattelands or a rural school, but it was also a school that the students at their age wasn't sure enough about what is out there and what it really entails of being. What does it mean to be a physiotherapist? They think they know what it was, but there were definitely a need for a better understanding. Interesting, some of the other findings were that that there were no difference between Raven scores, so logical reasoning ability, and personality types. So there's not one personality type more clever than another personality type. But what was interesting, that there were a significant difference between students that scored a sensing personality type preference and an intuitive personality type preference compared to their learner average obtained. So meaning that their academic marks, the average marks of that year. So that typically one can start hypothesize around it, what it would be and what it is. So it doesn't mean that kids with certain personalities are more clever than others, but it does show you that there's certain teaching styles and possibly some subjects that accommodate certain personality types better than others, which was quite interesting. What was also found in this group, based on the assessments that we did, was about 18 students had a considerable discrepancy between their academic results and their Raven scores, meaning that their Raven scores were above the 90th percentile, a lot of potential. However, academically, they barely reached the 50. So there were certain hurdles and certain things that one need to look at and investigate around why is it that what keeps them from achieving. And then lastly, we did the pre and a post questionnaire that looked a little bit at test anxiety and study support and general school attitude, etc. But to sum up this group process, all of these students received their individual report, their individual interest report. All of these students then received feedback as to how they take and understand these results in order for them to start their exploration process. The idea was not for them to make a decision as to what they want to be when they grow up. It's rather to start exploring so that they can actually understand themselves better and understand what they enjoy doing, what do they not enjoy doing, and also what they can possibly think of with regards to reading a little bit more about a specific career, work shadowing around a career. And the school implemented some changes from their regard as to based on the results found out of the study. Okay, and then the last slide, Hannah.
Um,
Yes.
yeah, with it, yes, with the last slide, then I would just like to summarize and pull all the little threads together. So during this whole session, we saw that career counseling always takes place in a specific context, and that we have to consider the broader context of the world of work and how it is currently changing. But then for us in South Africa, also the context in which we would deliver career counseling services. When you look at the world of work, then in the ever-changing situation that we are currently in and that we will be faced with in the future, we will see that as a quantitative approach, but also a qualitative approach would give you sometimes the best results. So looking at what information you would get from assessments, but then also looking at small little differences in the assessment results can add quite valuable information when providing feedback to the clients that are really eager to find out which specific careers they should explore and where they should go to next when trying to find different options and different careers that they might choose in the future. We find then also that the MCM is quite easily understandable and it adds value and fits very well in with other assessments when we look at how the specific case studies that Johnny mentioned and illustrated showed how the MCM can be incorporated with other specific assessments to give more information, and how you would use it also not just as a tool to specifically pinpoint a specific candidate in a direction, but also to make them aware of their own self-knowledge and become aware more of who they are and where they should look for more information to help them in their whole process of finding out which careers they would like to follow. We also do find then that the MCM as a specific tool is recently developed, new, and is updated continuously. So as the world of work is changing, we might also find that the specific assessment would be updated to accommodate also for new specific occupations that might be already evolving and being shaped, and to be available there in future to explore further by specific learners or even people that are currently in the specific occupations, but that might want to change as they see how technology advances, and where they might find that even they need to stay relevant within their work situation.
And
So, yes.
I think that brings us to a point. I know that we are about 10 minutes over our time, but is there anything else from your side, Hanli?
No. I think we have gone through quite in detail about what the MCM as an instrument is about and how it can be used in our career counseling processes.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, email us on info@jvrafrica.co.za. And until the next webinar, see you again. Ta-ta.
Bye-bye.